Thank you so much for being part of Divine Insights.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very glad that I'm talking with you today. Well, art for me is a very important part of my life. I've always been a very artistic person since I was a child. I love art in all its formats. And when I was a child, I remember that I was drawing everywhere I could find a piece of paper or something. I was drawing, but I never thought that I could dedicate myself professionally into it. But art has been part of my life since I think ever. My mother, for example, she studied art in Paris, so as art has been surrounding me since I was a child. So I try to draw at least 8 hours per day, and there are days sometimes that I draw even more, even longer. It depends on the piece I'm working on. But yeah, I'm actually at home. I have right now my studio at home, and yeah, I draw every day, and I try to have a very specific routine, and to follow it. I work with pencils. In the past, I was using graphite pencils and charcoal pencils, but right now I'm more focused on color pencils.
Okay,
Mhm,
I absolutely admire what you do because it's really hyper realism, which I think
mhm,
it requires so much of you, so much in proportions and the
mhm.
precision of everything that you do.
Exactly. And in general, hyperrealism is a style that requires a lot of time in general, not only for artists that are doing art with pencils, but also for other type of artists that are making art with uh, uh, um, oil or acrylic on canvas. Hyperrealism requires, in general, a lot of time. However, if you consider that I'm doing it with color pencils, it's even more difficult. It needs even more time because you need to build up layer by layer, and it's a very slow process, a very slow process. And in order to for the artwork to be smooth and and to seem like very hyper realistic, yeah, it requires a lot of time. Well, I first started uploading content to my social networks in 2017, more or less. As I mentioned before, I always loved to draw. Since I was a child, I drew everywhere. But in 2017, I just had the feeling uh, of drawing more, even more. And after talking with some of my colleagues at work, they recommended me to upload my drawings into social networks. And at first, I was doing just freehand portraits in black and white using graphite and charcoal. But after a while, I wanted my drawings to be more hyper realistic. I don't know, it's something that I really love. Um, I couldn't do anything else. I really like the feeling. I mean, what it's like to see a piece and that seems to be like alive. I really like this feeling. And so in 2017, I started uploading drawings, and slowly I was developing my technique more and more so that my drawings could be like as realistic, as hyper realistic as possible. Well, I really enjoy to be alone, drawing while I'm listening, for example, to a podcast or music. I really enjoy that part where I'm like alone and I have 6 or 8 hours ahead of me where I can draw without any interruptions. And I really love that part. For example, many friends ask me how it is possible that I can be like so many hours alone drawing, and I always answer that for me that's not a problem. I love to be alone while I'm doing something that I love, and in the meantime I'm also listening to a podcast or or radio or music, and that's something that I like. That's also that I love it to do it. And or for example, I'm a big fan also of audiobooks. And while I'm drawing, I'm also listening to a story, a book, and it's perfect. I really love it. I'm doing two things at a time.
Wow, it is almost like time for yourself. But I think that when we start and we get to work on a project, on an artistic or creative project,
Mhm.
it's like the time goes so fast or slow, depends.
Exactly,
Um,
exactly.
but it's like it's your time. It's like there's
Hmm.
nothing else in your mind. So in the
Hmm.
case of cancer patients, it's such a beautiful time for their mind to rest, to not think
Hmm.
about the diagnosis, the side effects, or how they feel, but instead, feeling more normal. So thank you
Exactly.
for sharing that. So in the case of your style,
Hmm.
I was reading some of your biography, and you are self-taught.
Yeah, at the beginning, at first, I was a little bit embarrassed to tell people that I was self-taught because, yeah, as an artist, it's like you really need to have like a background of like studies and education. But for me personally, artists must be self-taught because you always need to develop yourself and continue developing yourself. By being self-taught, you're all the time developing yourself.
You think what comes first, color, media, or the subject?
For me, first comes the subject because the steps that I follow for my creative process are first, I start with an idea. I have an idea in mind, and I try to make a composition of that idea. And once I have done the composition, I take a photo of that composition, and I'll use that photo as a reference for my drawing. But first, it all starts with an idea of an object, a subject in my mind that I really want to draw and to show people. Yeah,
Love
that's
it.
what I would say.
And what you just said is so important because you work on realism, then
Hmm.
it's so important to have a reference.
Hmm.
I remember I have two boys, and they used to tell me, "Mom, draw me I don't know, a flower, draw me a car."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Well, let's look at some pictures." And they were like, "Why?" I'm like, "Because if I want to draw you something that looks like a car in a more realistic way, I want to have a reference."
Hmm.
I
I was before being an artist 100% or before dedicating myself into art 100%, I also had another profession, and I decided to quit my job to follow my dream and to be 100% an artist. I quit my job is because I wanted more freedom. I needed more freedom, and also my body needed more creativity. And I think that with the last drawings that I've made, you can see this searching for freedom. For example, I will give you an example. One of the last drawings that I've made recently is a bougainvillea plant, a bougainvillea flower. I think in Colombia it's called Trinitaria. Uh, I'm not sure because it has different names all over the world, and it's a plant that it seems that is coming out of the paper. It's a plant that it seems that is looking for freedom, coming out from the paper and trying to expand herself. And that's what I would say. That's how I could like possibly relate my experience by quitting my job and looking for freedom, and also the artworks that I do right now.
That is great. Because one of the things that I like to share with patients is use this moment in your journey as an
Hmm.
inspiration. Use the
Hmm.
elements, use symbolism, use the colors, use the smells, use anything to get you to create something that is
Hmm.
meaningful to you and that
Exactly.
represents who you are. Because at the end, don't you think that art is about representing your feelings, who you
Of
are?
course, of course, of course. We are putting a lot of us in our pieces, in our artworks. Absolutely.
I think that's what I enjoy so much going to museums. And
Hmm.
when I go into a museum, as I see the art piece, but then I remember the artist was
Hmm.
in front of this canvas or this paper, or, it was in front of this piece, and it was giving time and the emotion
Hmm.
and the good days and the bad
Exactly.
days. So for
Exactly.
me, it's like, oh my gosh, I just love it more. I feel a little bit sad when I see, nowadays, just like people looking for the Instagram moment in front
Hmm.
of art, and not thinking about that an amazing artist created that piece. So,
Exactly.
yeah, but
Exactly. Because, yeah, for every artwork, there is a story behind, and that story has been created by an artist. So you cannot separate the artwork with the artist. It is impossible. It's all together.
yeah.
It's intentional. Yeah. Um, I'm doing what I'm doing because I love to do it and because I choose to do it.